All right, so we know it can be difficult to find the resources you need to do your job, your work as a M365 developer. So we thought we'd show you today kind of a holiday miracle, if you will, and walk you through a little story that is totally not made up. So let's get started. So the story today is Introduction to the Microsoft 365 Universal Sample Gallery. A special holiday demo by Bob German and Hugo Bernier. 'Twas the night before deadline, when all through my house not a feature was working, not even my mouse. Many browser tabs were open without care, in hopes that the answers would soon be there. The managers were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of future scrums danced in their heads. And my coworkers from their Teams app had just logged off for a well-deserved nap. When, from my keyboard clatter, I sprang upon a sample browser that would soon solve the matter. A way to download samples in a flash. It built and ran without even a crash. A place where samples seemed to overflow, pulling from many repositories below. I was still admiring the browser when to my wondering eyes should appear, without a delay, someone we hold dear. A kind coder, a SharePoint veteran, I knew in a moment it must be Bob German. More filters and keywords, the results that came, and he listed the features and he called them by name. Now web parts, now extensions, now Teams apps and chatbots, on Viva connections, on Power Apps, on flows, scripts, and more. So, Bob, why don't you show them what you showed me?
Sounds good. Thank you so much. That was amazing, Hugo. So let's take a look. And Hugo just talked about all the different repositories, and look at that. Look at all the different repos that we have now. And most of these are community samples, right? So you can see all of the different community sample repositories on the left of the slide. And then there's some Microsoft ones, which are feeding in also team samples, because sometimes it can be hard to find them. There's the app templates and the bot builder samples, which often pertain to Teams, as well as the Office developer samples from Teams Engineering. Now, all of these, and this has been around for a while, these various repositories all kind of roll up into individual product-based sample browsers, and those are still around, and I'll show you a couple. So if you wanted Teams or web parts or Power Platform, you could use one of those sample browsers. But wouldn't it be great if we had one browser to rule them all, one browser to bind them? And that's the Universal Sample Gallery. And so let's take a look right now. Just before I go there, let me just share that this is kind of where I started in the PnP work. This was really, I would come in here to SPDev FX web parts. It was in a different org back then. And I would go here into samples, and and you can see that they've used a very tidy naming convention. So when there were 20 of them, it wasn't so hard to find the one you wanted. Look at all these, right? And Hugo, by the way, has been maintaining this repo for some time now and doing a fabulous job. So, but how do you find what you want in this kind of an environment? Well, now what you can do is you can just type into any browser, adoption.microsoft.com, and you come to this Microsoft adoption site. And if you scroll down, you can see there's different journeys. And all these are useful, but this is the developer group here. So we're going to go into developer. And then if you scroll down just a little bit more, there's a link to this sample solution gallery. And this is the new universal solution gallery. So you can see it here. There's a bunch of different results. Now, as it turned out, I actually was looking for my team, for something that we can review documents. So my team is distributed all over the world, and we would really like a nice way to review documents kind of asynchronously. And so we thought we'd take a look here. And indeed, there's a bunch of different results here. And what's nice about these is that they're actually working across all of the different repositories. So you can see some here that are for Teams, but some also that are for SharePoint and other products. So I could really kind of get the broad view of opportunities to solve my business problem across the entire suite. Let me go into this one and kind of show a little bit about what happens. If I come in here, you can see the metadata that was associated with this sample. You can actually see references to other documents that may help you on your way. And of course, you can see how to get to it in GitHub. Let's take a look, though, at Joao Mendez's profile here, because we're actually trying to highlight the community just a little bit more in this one. And so here you can see all of his different contributions, and wow, they just kind of go on and on, right? There's so many of them. And you can browse through all those and get to Joao's information on GitHub. So all of this is actually sourced from GitHub using GitHub's privacy rules, etc., and opt-ins, so that you're not really, giving up any permissions that you hadn't already shared as part of your GitHub activity, and whatever you put in GitHub is what you have. So that's great. But you know what? I'm going to go back to my document review search again, because I really, that was a SharePoint sample, and as much as I love SharePoint, my teammates and I are looking for something in Microsoft Teams that we can use in a Teams channel. So I'm going to come down here and notice that I can refine by product here. So I'm going to look for Teams samples, and that brings us down to a smaller set of samples here, where I can come in here and kind of browse right in here to this sample. So that's how it works. Now, let me show you what's kind of a work in progress, okay? What we have, the search is kind of right at this moment is limited to the title and the description and a few other fields that are there. Doesn't include all of the metadata that I showed. So to just kind of refresh on that, let me open up the sample here. You can see, here's some of the different metadata that we're tracking. I'm tracking on the team side. So I do the team samples, and there's other people curating the different repos. All of this information actually comes out of little JSON files that are inside of the repositories. And so there's a background process that scans through them all. I think Paulo had something to do with that. And it pulls it all and aggregates it all into a backend web service that is driven by this UI. So what we don't really have yet is the ability to kind of come in here and filter. You can see that they're working on it, but these don't completely work yet, and the topics that are here don't necessarily align with the product that I've selected. So that's something that we're working on. We're also working on improving the search capability, but it is now completely launched, and all of the samples are in there, and it's incredibly useful even in its current form, just based on being able to find samples based on a certain scenario or topic. On the other hand, if I said I really was looking to learn about bots, so I'm going to look for a bot that is in JavaScript and works in Teams. And because all of those are actually metadata based, it's not actually going to get me there yet. So we've decided to keep the individual product browsers all around for a little while until the remaining features are implemented fully. And so if I go into, here's the team sample browser, again, written by our friend Hugo. I adapted his work for Teams. And inside of here, yeah, I can come in and actually drill in on some of the technical aspects here. So you can only filter by one thing, but here's a bot. So if I want to see just the bot samples, and then this search is actually keyed into all the metadata, which may give you a lot of results, maybe too many sometimes. And I'm also looking for a bare bones sample, which is something that's very, very simple. And here you can see, okay, now I have a kind of manageable set of solutions that I could use. And indeed, these are just another great contributor here. Hilton has actually provided this one. And these just bring you directly into GitHub. You don't get that fun splash page. So great progress on this, but we're not completely done with the universal sample browser. Definitely encourage you to start there though, especially if you're looking to solve a certain type of problem and you want to really look across all the different products to get there. So the big question though, Hugo, is how does your story end? Did they make the release on time? Did they have to stay up all night? Did Santa drop off a USB stick with working source code? How did this end up?
Well, let me show you. But before I get back to the story and put everyone to sleep, I thought I'd kind of talk a little bit more about some of the repos that we've discussed, right? So,
Please.
As Bob pointed out, there are lots of repositories, and the one thing that this diagram shows a little bit more, if you look at it, is that we're actually grabbing, for example, in the case of the Teams sample gallery, we're grabbing samples from various repositories, some that are created by Microsoft and curated by Microsoft, and they're not really intended for community contributors. But the majority of our sample repositories, while they are curated samples, that means we review them, we test them, we make sure that they demonstrate a good concept and that they're good examples to get started from. They're all contributed by people like you in the community. And this is amazing to see the volume of samples that we have out there and the range in terms of scope, because we'll have some samples that are very basic concept. We'll have some that are full-on solutions. Joao, for example, does amazing solutions that you could, if the samples were intended to do that, you could probably grab them and deploy them to production. Now, these samples are not intended to be used in production. They're intended to teach you concepts. It's up to you, absolutely up to you, to take these samples, look at them, make sure that you're happy with the code and everything before you use them in your own solutions. We have a few more sample repositories that we're currently setting up, specifically around PCF samples. We've got Power Apps Portal samples in the Power Platform. We're also integrating with the independent publisher, independent connector repository for our Power Platform. And this is growing and growing. Again, you don't have to worry about how many repositories we have or how many sample browsers. You only need to remember the Universal Sample Gallery if you're not quite sure, where do I get started, right? Where do I find the sample? And then you'll actually be able to, if you're not happy with the level of granularity that you're getting within the Universal Sample Gallery, then you can definitely go one step further in the red areas here. For example, if I want to go to Paul Bullock's awesome script sample gallery, you can definitely go in and do that.
Yeah.
A couple more things, because that certainly in my story that saved the day, is that for every sample, and we're gradually rolling this out to every sample repositories, we're making it easy. Well, first of all, in the sample browsers, again, Paul was saying, hey, I can search by author. Absolutely. So if you want to search for things that Marcus has done in web parts, you can actually find the samples by Marcus here. If you want to actually, if you click on the sample itself, it'll take you to the README associated to the sample. They always have kind of a preview of what the sample does, as well as things like, in the case of web parts, the compatibility, right? So you don't have to worry about, oh, what version of Node, what version of, SPFX do I need? It'll tell you exactly what is supported on the samples, what version of Node you need, and things like that, as well as a new feature, which if you've used the the SPFX sample gallery before, you might know that the repository is a gigantic one. And that can be hard if you're just trying to download a very simple sample. Try to say that 5 times fast. So one of the things that we've done here is, instead of just cloning the entire repository, one of the things that you can do now is you can actually download the samples as a zip file. So instead of downloading the gigantic repository, you can download just a zip file, explode the zip file on your hard drive, and then follow the instructions. One other little bit that I should point out here, if I can get out of my Zoom, the samples that have videos associated to them. So, for example, I know the adaptive card has one. When you see a demo on the community calls that are done, and I know this is a long one, so I'm going to go to the end here. I like to document my samples, by the way, as you can see.
We like it too.
Yeah. So if there's a video associated to the sample that was on one of these calls, we're now trying to highlight these videos. And you'll see this both in the universal sample gallery and in the README files. And again, so you can, if you're not quite sure about what the sample was about or how the sample was built, you'll actually be able to see the videos as well. So again, we're really, really trying hard to lower the barrier to finding samples, regardless of the technology, make it easy for you to go to specific samples as you need it, get started really quickly, and learn to adapt. And the one thing that we should also point out is, if you're not happy with the samples that you find, once you figure it out, okay, you know what, I'm really looking for a web part sample or a sample or something like that, one of the things that you can do is you can go to the issues. Every repo has an issue library, and you can actually request a sample. So you go sample request, and you tell us, what is it that you're expected the sample to do? And are you willing to, help us build the sample? And someone in the community, I hope, will help volunteer to help doing this. It's actually, this process has been kind of the catalyst to a lot of cool contributions out there. And I love seeing people getting together and contributing together for samples.
Absolutely. And by the way, that author trick that you showed, that also works in the universal gallery as well. So you can type somebody's name into the search box and find their samples across all of the different repos using that method.
Now, you might say, well, I don't just want to consume the samples. I actually want to contribute to the samples. Again, all these samples are open source repositories, or the ones that we highlighted in green in our chart. So if you want to submit a sample, you can absolutely do that. Just follow the contribution guidelines. And if you're like, I don't know how to contribute because I don't know GitHub. GitHub is scary. Well, David talks about the Sharing is Caring initiative. That's absolutely what the Sharing is Caring initiative is about, is to walk you through your first pull request. At the end of your first Sharing is Caring session, you'll actually know how to contribute to one of the repos, because you'll have done your first pull request already. All right, so with that whole disclaimer in mind, let's go back to our story. To the downloads folder, so I could try them all. Now stash away all. Having found the solution I needed, I went straight to work and built all the features, then smiled with a smirk. I sprang without delay to my team, gave a whistle, and shared with them the samples plentiful. But I heard Bob explain with much delight, Happy
samples to all, and to all a good night.
Happy samples, everyone. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone. And thanks for a great community and a great year.
Thank you.
Well done, gentlemen. Yeah. Just
And
gonna let
Hugo
it
gets all the
soak
credit
it
for
in
this
for a
creative
moment.
stuff, by the way. Amazing
Excellent.
job, Hugo. And thank you for making me a star in there. That was very, very nice of you.
It wasn't a
Yes.
stretch to talk
character.
about how you're beloved in the community, Bob.
Aw.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.